Hey y'all, I wanted to summarize for us all the different ways that our students know how to multiply and divide by powers of 10. At this point in the year, there's some students that prefer one way over another, which is totally fine because we as adults do the same thing. So first I want to start with multiplying by powers of 10. Here I provided two different strategies. One would be like the slide method, which is the very first thing that our students learned at the beginning of the year. We started with understanding place value, that the ones is 10 times the value of tenths, and that the hundredths is 1/10 the value of tenths. And so like thinking about if I have 3 and 3/10 times 100. Let's just look at the ones place for a second. What this shows is 3 groups of 1. And if I were to multiply this by 100, what that would be is 3 groups of 100. Instead of 3 groups of 1, we would have 3 groups of 100. We started this by saying like 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 10 is 30, 3 times 100 is 300. We know that from 4th grade. And so the only new thing that our kids learned in 5th grade was like also we're looking at these like fractional parts, so the tenths and the hundredths. And we're using a place value chart here. If I multiply by 100, I have 2 zeros, right? And so I'm sliding 2 place values. If I was only multiplying by 10, I'm only moving 1 place value to the left. Here I'm multiplying by 100, that's 2 place values to the left. So I had 3 groups of 1, now I have 3 groups of 100. And so everything else slides into place. I wanted to show this example because here we have to annex a 0 in the ones place, right? And so here we would write 3 and 3/10 times 100 is 330. Another way to do this is just to multiply as we did with decimals, right? So we have 3 and 3/10, which is the same as 33/10. I know that because these 3 wholes represents 30/10. Again, going back to thinking about place value, 3 ones is the same as 30/10. And then I have the 3/10, so I have 33/10 times 100 over 1. That gives me 3,300 tenths. And what's nice about this is we can plug it back into our place value chart. And if I have the 0 in the tenths place, because my denominator here is tenths, I end up getting the same answer. 3,300 tenths is the same as 330 ones. All right, let's look at the next example. It's a little bit different. So here I have 43 thousandths times 10. So using the slide method, we would be sliding to the left 1 place value because I'm multiplying by 10, and we know that 10 thousandths make a hundredth, 10 hundredths make a tenth, 10 tenths make 1, right? And so like this gets at the relative place value, the sliding method. Another way to do this would be multiplying just as we did with powers of 10, or with multiplying just as we did with decimals. I have 43 thousandths, I know that because the 3 is in the thousands place, times 10 over 1, that gives me 430 thousandths. And again, if I were to write this last digit, the 0 in the thousandths place, I still end up with 43 hundredths. So same answer both ways to do it. Now let's look at some division problems. The first one, I just have a whole number divided by 100. And so like there's a couple different ways we could do this. I think the easiest way for kids right away to do this is think about like, well, this is, I'm gonna jump over here to the divide method first. This is the same as 24 divided by 100, which is 24 hundredths. Some kids from there can go right into, well, 24 hundredths is 24 hundredths as a decimal. Like I don't need to put it back into a place value chart. Some kids might want to, right? Like the 4 ends up in the hundredths place, which is the same as 24 hundredths. Okay, I'm gonna go back over to the slide method. If I had 24, I have 2 tens, 4 ones. I'm dividing it by 100. That means I'm sliding to the right 2 place values. That means my ones now slide into my hundredth spot, my 2s slide into my tenths, or my 10s slide into my tenths. We're moving 2 place values, so I end up with the same answer. Now we're also seeing some students are starting to use the standard algorithm for division, writing 24 inside of our division sign, so that being the dividend, 100 being the divisor. The only tricky thing here is that some students are mixing up like where to place the number in their quotient. So just be careful with students that are using the standard algorithm that they should also be checking using one of these other 2 strategies, right? All right, so let's look at a more complicated one. right? This, I have 3 and 5/10 divided by 100. Okay, so I could do the slide method, right? 3 and 5/10, I'm sliding back 2 place values, right? So then this ends up as 35/100. And the other way we could do this is with the standard algorithm, right? This is where things get, I think, a little tricky for our students, recognizing that we have to place a 0 here, right? And then like 100 goes into 350 hundredths, 300ths times. So it just, I'm weary about students actually placing the correct digits into our quotient when we have to annex zeros first. Another way to do this would be actually using a strategy that we did with division. I would write 3 and 5/10 hundredths, and then I want to make this into a whole number. So I'm going to multiply by 10 over 10 because 10 over 10 is equal to 1. That gives me 35 thousandths. 10 times 100 is 1,000. 3 and 5/10 times 10 is 35. And then I can rewrite that as a decimal. 35 thousandths means that the 5 needs to be in the thousandths place. All right, so there's a whole bunch of different strategies that kids know or that we should be reviewing and reteaching around multiplying and dividing by powers of 10.